I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. On today's show, we're going to share 5 things we'll be watching for when the USMNT plays Trinidad and Tobago in the Nations League quarterfinals. The first leg is this Thursday, November 16th in Austin, Texas, and the second leg is November 20th in Port of Spain, Trinidad. To help me preview these matches, I've invited Larry Henry Jr. back to the show. Larry is the managing editor and USMNT insider at SBI Soccer. He's also a writer for MLS Next Pro and PHLY Sports. Larry, welcome to the show.
Hey Frank, good to be back with you again as always. Glad to catch up and yeah, man, always excited to break down the US men's national team as we have some competitive action this month after back-to-back months of international friendlies on home soil. So glad to be back with you again.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk through this, and we know what's on the line. You know, the Copa America berth is on the line, so that's why these matches are so important. And I'll go ahead and kick us off with the first thing I'll be watching for, which is one of the first things I'm usually watching for when the lineups come out, and that's who's going to be starting at center back. You know, I say this a lot on a lot of different episodes. I think center back is still one of the most wide open positions for this USMNT. We got Cameron Carter-Vickers, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson on the roster this time. And I'm particularly interested in seeing what Greg does with Cameron Carter-Vickers because, you know, he was out for injury for a while. Last time he was in camp, I still think he had kind of a minutes limitation. But I believe the gloves are off now. If he wanted to start him and go the majority of the match, I think that'd be okay. And I'm curious to see if he does. Or does he still kind of think Tim Ream and Chris Richards are above CCV on the depth chart? Because those two have been getting most of the starts lately. You know, Miles Robinson could always come in there as well, but I think it's going to be between Tim Ream, Chris Richards, and Cameron Carter-Vickers. We know Greg trusts Cameron Carter-Vickers. You know, he started him in that World Cup game against Iran, and CCV did well. So yeah, I always look for that when I see the starting lineup come out is who's starting at center back, and this match against Trinidad is going to be no different. Do you have any predictions on who you think it'll be?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what way Greg goes. I am a Cameron Carter-Vickers fan with what he's done at club level with Celtic the past 2 seasons now. And I just think that, again, like you said, the gloves are off a bit because he has come back from injury. He did get a little bit of a rest, not this past weekend, but the prior weekend. He was rested just due to kind of like a quick group of minutes with so many competitions going on. So I do think we will see Cameron Carter-Vickers. I'm hoping that it's Cameron Carter-Vickers and Chris Richards, just because I like to see the younger players getting an opportunity. But I do think that Tim Ream might get the nod along with one of these guys just due to his veteran experience in the squad.
I wouldn't be surprised either if that happens, especially since I think this home match, you know, the U.S. they're going to be trying to get as many goals as possible. I mean, I know that's the point of every match you play, but they definitely don't want to go to Trinidad with only like a 1-goal lead or two goal lead in aggregate. And I think Tim Ream gives them that. He just has great distribution out of the back, helps with moving the ball forward, and so I kind of think Greg might lean towards him as well, but we'll see. So, Larry, what's the first thing you're going to be looking at when these two teams take the field?
Definitely one thing I'm going to be looking at is the fullback position and how, similar to how you said about the center backs and which way Greg Berhalter goes with his starting lineup. I'm going to be looking at the fullback positions because we have a lot of versatility there, right? We have Anthony Robinson back in this national team picture this month after missing the October window due to an injury. He's back and healthy, playing regularly for Fulham, and I think he'll ultimately be our number one left back for many years to come. However, it is a tricky situation for Greg because we do have Serginho Dest, Joe Scally, and Christopher Lunn as well in this camp, and Dest and Scally, we know, can play both sides of the field. They can play at right back, they can play at left back, they could play kind of even in a more advanced role, whether it's like a wing back position. And both of them are riding, I think, pretty good runs of form, right? Scally coming off a really good performance against Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, registered an assist. Gladbach is now unbeaten in their last four in all competitions, which is great for them because they had a pretty tough go at it the early parts of the season. Dest is continuing to be a key contributor for PSV, not only in the Netherlands, but also in the Champions League as well. They're still fighting for a knockout round spot. And I think both of those guys will be itching to start. Christopher Lund might be the odd man out in this just because he's still kind of new with the national team. He's got 3 caps under his belt. He will be pushing for minutes definitely in this camp and again for years to come, I think, at left back. But overall, I think we see Anthony Robinson on the left side and probably Serginho Dest on the right side. But I wouldn't put it past, Greg Berhalter to give Joe Scally some minutes over these next 2 games as well, because he is definitely in good form right now and brings a lot of versatility to this squad. What do you think, Frank? Do you think we will see any kind of changes at fullback, or will we see our top 2 guys being Robinson and Dest?
I think if I had to predict it, I think he'll go with Anthony Robinson and Dest. They've been so regular there. I do think Scally is definitely, he's getting lots of minutes in the Bundesliga. Like you said, he's been in good form. So, it wouldn't be shocking to see him there. And I think definitely those 3, Scally, Dest, and Robinson are kind of like, there's some separation between those 3 and the next number 4 on the depth chart, Christopher Lund. But I tell you what, I still think even if Lund doesn't get a lot of minutes, I still think this is big for him. He's been on the roster now, I think, the last 3 camps in a row. He seems to have beaten out like the Dwan Jones and Yedlins of the world. And I think that's a good sign for him. I mean, do you see it the same way? Do you think he's now separated himself from some of those other fullbacks competing for that final roster spot there?
I do. I think he's coming into his own a little bit now in Italy. Obviously, he made a kind of a bigger club move, right? Going from Sweden to Italy to Serie B to a Palermo side who's going to be fighting to earn promotion back to Serie A. And I think he's been a great story, right? To the guy we didn't really think was going to be the guy probably none of us really heard of that makes the international switch to the USA. So and now he's, like you said, maybe the number 4 option right now in terms of fullbacks in this roster. So I think too, playing in Europe obviously gives him maybe a leg up over the Dewan Jones and the DeAndre Edlins and some other guy, John Tolkins, that are playing in MLS. So overall, I think that Lund is definitely playing at a high level right now, and it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of keep that going into 2024 when we have potentially the Nations League semifinals and final, as well as Copa America around the corner as well.
Yeah, it's always. I mentioned I always look for which center backs are going to start when the lineup comes out. When the roster gets announced, I'm always looking at the fullbacks because I think that has been such a competitive. Not the starting fullbacks because Dest and Robinson have had kind of their names in there for quite a while now, but there's always been competition for that number 3 and 4 spot, which I think Scally's kind of separated himself now for that number 3. But it's always interesting to see who Greg chooses for that last spot. So let me go to my next thing, my number 3, my third thing I'll be kind of watching for with these matches, and it's, does the U.S. score early? Because we see this a lot of times when the U.S. plays one of these CONCACAF teams that we all feel they should beat. Relatively comfortable. I hate to say the word easy, but it should be pretty comfortable with a lot of these teams. And what I've seen over the past is when they get that goal early, then you kind of get maybe a little landslide effect, and it can be 4 or 5 nil pretty fast. Whereas if they struggle to get that first goal, then the other team starts getting a little bit more belief. And next thing you know, the U.S. is kind of in a dogfight. And I'll give you a couple of examples. You look at the last Gold Cup when the U.S. played Trinidad, they scored in the 14th minute, ended up winning 6-0. Also in that Gold Cup, they played St. Kitts and Nevis, scored in the 12th minute, won 6-0. You go back to the March Nations League, they played Grenada, scored in the 4th minute, won 7-1. But then the opposite was also in the March Nations League. They were home against El Salvador, didn't score until the 62nd minute, only won that match, 1-0. And so that's what we don't want to happen. I mean, I will feel not good if we go to Trinidad with only like one or two goals to our advantage in the aggregate. I think that they still should have no problem winning at Trinidad, but we know what happened. What is that? Almost like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't want that, and so I'm hoping they can score early, and then the goals can start to fall a little bit faster. Any thoughts on that?
No, I that's definitely going to be something I'm going to be keeping an eye on as well, right? Because this is a Trinidad team that the U.S. have pretty much dominated in their head-to-head history over the years. And again, this is might not be, we're still missing some guys, right? We're not full first choice team in terms of some guys missing out through injury, but overall there's still a boatload of quality in this roster, and they should handle themselves pretty well, I think. The first leg in home soil, and then the second leg in Trinidad. So definitely excited to see how they go about it, right? Because like you said in the intro, you don't want to go to Trinidad up 2-1 or 1-0 or tied even or even down. But I think they're going to take care of business at home, and again, there's going to be a lot of guys I think that are riding some good waves of form that should be able to help them along the way.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope they can get a couple of those goals early. So, what's number 4 on your list? Fourth thing to watch for this match.
So looking at the roster, obviously there's two big absences, right? Christian Pulisic and Timothy Weah, both missing due to respective injuries at club level. And I think that'll be another thing I'm keeping an eye on over the next two games is who kind of steps up in their absence. We have obviously Folarin Balogun and Ricardo Pepi will be, fighting for the number 9 spot, but out wide, right, we have Brendan Aronson, Kevin Paredes, and Alex Zendejas as the other three forwards listed on the roster, and we mainly see them out wide anyway. What way will Berhalter go? Will we see, Aronson and Paredes? Will we see Paredes and Zendejas? Will we see Aronson and Zendejas? Could we see somebody like a Gio Reyna sneak up into the winger picture, kind of just due to the injuries as well? I don't think we're going to see Gio Reyna in an advanced role out wide because I think he's so dangerous in the heart of midfield and at a number 10 role. But I do think that is an option that Berhalter might toy with. We've seen it in the past. And I think too, right, you look at these other three players, Aronson, Paredes, and Zendejas. Zendejas comes in really good form, scoring and assisting over the last few weeks with Club America as they win the Clausura in Mexico. A guy who has done pretty well at club level and is trying to translate it over to the national team. We haven't maybe seen the best of him yet on a consistent basis. Looking at Kevin Paredes, he's earning more and more minutes now in the Bundesliga with Wolfsburg. He scored a goal 2 weekends ago. Very versatile player, can play as a fullback or even as an out wide midfielder, and then can also play as a winger. He had a really impactful window, I thought, in September. I believe it was the game against Oman where he helped force an own goal in limited time. So I think he's going to be, itching to get some minutes. And then Brendan Aronson, we know what he's about: 36 caps, 8 goals. He's really the most experienced out of these wingers right now on this roster. but he's a guy who is struggling a little bit for form. Union Berlin have not really picked up where they left off in the Bundesliga this season. Fighting what could be a relegation picture, struggling a little bit in the Champions League. Aronson maybe needs a little bit of a spark to get back to his best at club level. He hasn't really offered too much in the final third with Union Berlin this season, but overall with the national team, I think he's done pretty well in his opportunities this fall. So I think we will see him in these matches. We will see all three of them, right? But I just think we'll definitely see Aronson in one spot, and then who do we see at the other? Do we see Paredes or Zendejas? I think we're gonna see Greg maybe take the reins off Paredes a little bit and maybe give him an opportunity in a must-win match, because I think right now he's shown me a little more in limited time with the national team than Zendejas has shown me with more time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's going to be so interesting to see, when the lineups come out and we get to see number one, yeah, where is Reyna? What formation are they in? I mean, I go back and forth on this. There's one part of me that says, okay, we're gonna stick in this 4-2-3-1. We'll have Reyna play that central, number 10, and then just put Aronson and then somebody else on one of the wings. And then for whoever that somebody else is, whether it's Zendejas, whether it's Paredes, I mean, I think that's just what an unbelievable opportunity it is for either of those guys. Like you said, Paredes, he's been called into the last, couple camps, I believe. He's starting now for Wolfsburg. Yeah, I'd like to see him kind of like given a chance there. But then Zendejas, I kind of thought he played himself out of the roster a bit at the Gold Cup, but now he's kind of fought his way back in a bit. Number one with injuries, but number two with his club form at Club America. But then I also think, what if they put Tillman at that number 10 and then have Reyna and Aronson, on the wings, because Tillman has been playing that role at PSV and he's been doing well. And then I also wonder, will Greg just say, I'm just going to go back to my 4-3-3 and put Reyna and Aronson, on the wings, and then maybe go with Musa McKinney and De La Torre in the midfield or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities here. So you're thinking the 4-2-3-1 with Reyna in the middle and Aronson and Paredes, and then Balogun, of course, up top. That's what your prediction is?
Yeah, that's the way I'm going. I mean, I could also see them going 4-3-3 like they've done, a lot under Greg, where you could do a, Balogun straight up the middle and then an Aronson and Zendejas, or an Aronson and Paredes out wide. And then you obviously have the midfield, right? Then you have, McKinney, Musa, and then maybe Gio Reyna. It's tricky, right? Because obviously Johnny Cardoso's injury, I think, maybe kind of hurt some things in a sense where they could have maybe used him more in a defensive role and then let the midfielders go up. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how it shakes out, and how Greg kind of goes about it. I think the Tillman nod is also a great idea because he's had a really good go of things of late with PSV, and I think I'd like to see more of him in the starting lineup.
And so that's my number 5 thing to look for. Actually, is Malik Tillman. This is a player I'm really interested in. His name's been around for a while. He hasn't got a lot of minutes with the U.S. men's national team so far. He did get that start, I think, a couple of windows ago, but still waiting for his kind of, I guess, big opportunity or the chance for him to kind of like show what he can do. He's been playing at a high level at PSV. That club is just having a great season so far. He's playing in the Champions League. So I'm waiting for that match where he can kind of maybe break through a little bit. I'm wondering if this is the window for him. I mean, do you think there's any chance that he could play that number 10 in the 4-2-3-1?
Absolutely. I think he's such a talented player, right? He's only 21 years old. I thought it was a great acquisition that the national team was able to get him to flip from Germany, because he's such a talented player, still in the books at Bayern Munich. obviously they signed him before they loaned him out to PSV. They signed him to a longer contract, so they still probably have some aspirations to have him in the squad down the road. But yeah, I would love to see him get more time, right? Because he hasn't played a whole lot with the national team this calendar year. He's only had the 2 games in September against Uzbekistan and Oman, where he came off the bench against Uzbekistan and then started, played 71 minutes against Oman. But outside of that, he's missed some time with he had a hamstring injury a little bit over June after the tail end of his loan spell with Rangers. And like you said, he's had a really good go of things with PSV. They're unbeaten in the league. They're still fighting to advance in the Champions League. He doesn't need much time to make an impact. We've seen him come off the bench there and a route in league play and chip in a goal or chip in an assist in limited time. So I would love to see him get more time. And then, like you've previously stated, that maybe that pushes Gio Reyna into a winger role, and then maybe gives the U.S. Their best kind of core of attackers on the field at one time, because they have so many. It's all about trying to piece together what's the best way.
Well, there you go. There's our 5 things to watch for when the USMNT plays Trinidad and Tobago. Larry, thank you so much for joining me. I'll make sure and put links in the show notes to your Twitter/X account, which is at lhenry019, and also to your work at SBI Soccer. Before I let you go, any final thoughts that you want to share?
No, that's about it. Thanks so much, Frank, for having me again. Always good to catch up with you, and glad we have some competitive matches to look forward to. It's always good to see the national team in action, but it always adds a little more energy and fire when it's a competitive match. And I think it's going to be a great window for the team, and I expect a pair of wins and a spot in the Nations League semifinals and Copa America for next year. So thanks for having me, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you, Larry, and thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a fellow USMNT fan. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on Twitter/X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.